First of all, hello and thank you for joining us to learn more about enhancing collaboration with Poly Solutions. Marco, they're a Poly, they're a power partner with Poly, and we're delighted to show you how you can create a more engaging video conference meeting with AI integrated into both the audio and the video on the cameras and the noise within the room. Today we have two speakers, John Rouette, Senior Sales Engineer, who will tell us all about the features embedded in Poly's video conferencing devices. Following John, we got Elizabeth Petillo, Program Manager, who's going to give us a live demonstration of all the features that John covered. I have seen this already firsthand. It is awesome. It works. And it's amazing on how we can integrate in a meeting together better with both hand gestures and the audio side of it. After the meeting, we're going to have a short Q&A. Please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A as the speakers are presenting, and then we can address them at the end of the meeting to cover any questions you guys might have. So feel free to type those in. We'll also email you the PowerPoint after the meeting, and then one lucky attendee will win the R30 that we'll send out to you after we draw your name and whoever's awarded. So sit back, relax, and discover how Marco and Polly can help you become more productive to achieve goals. And we'll start with John here.
Hi, folks. As Dan mentioned, I'm John Rouette. I'm one of the pre-sales engineers here at Poly. And I'm going to apologize in advance for my slightly gravelly voice today. I'm kind of getting over a cold here, so hopefully I don't have to stop and drink water too often. But let me get cracking. So one of the things I wanted to show you guys today was all the advanced audio and video features that we've got in our products. So with Poly, we've got basically three groups of hardware products that you can use in various environments in your company. We've got group video for conference rooms and the like, corporate voice, and then personal devices, USB devices, headsets, speakerphones, that type of stuff. I'm going to be focusing mainly on the group video products today, but a lot of the features that I'm talking about on the audio side are a little bit pervasive. They go across our portfolio. So I'm going to be mainly discussing the red bullet points here. I'm not going to focus on boxes today. I'm going to focus mainly on these specific features and how they're enhanced with our new AI features. So one other thing to mention is that in a lot of our products, although we can operate industry standards that have been around for years, SIP, H323, that type of stuff, we also nowadays run native apps from the various platform manufacturers like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Meet. Those apps can run right on a lot of our products. So the video products, on the audio side, Teams and Zoom both have apps that we can put in our phones. And so a lot of that might be useful to you as well. And these features that I'm going to be discussing cascade down into those when you're using those apps as well. Okay, so the first one is acoustic fence. This has been around quite a while, since really before even the AI era of software. Um, Acoustic fence uses multiple microphones to detect noise as well as the speech you want to keep in your call. And it uses the microphones in various ways to decide on what's noise and what's not noise. So in our video bars, for example, there is an acoustic fence that you can build that is basically a cone coming out the front, and you can narrow it down if you got a conference room with a lot of traffic and people and stuff off to the sides. You can narrow it down. If you've got one of our traditional codecs with ceiling microphones, you can use a couple of mics to decide what's noise on the outside of your call and what noise you or speakers you want to pick up on the inside of your call, and they'll noise cancel out from each other. So by using microphones in creative ways, we can detect or determine what's to be kept in the audio input into the call and what to throw away. Our desk phones, for example, There's up to three microphones in a desk phone. You can have your handset mic, you can have your headset mic, but there's also a hands-free mic sitting on the base of the phone. And we can use that hands-free mic to listen to ambient noise in the room and cancel that out of the mic you're talking into on your headset or your handset. So say in a call center where all your agents are packed in like sardines, you don't want adjacent agents to be picking up the calls, credit card numbers, or whatever other agents are repeating the next cubicle over. So those will get canceled out of the call. In the same fashion, on our headsets, we've got a version of this where we use multiple microphones facing outwards, facing inwards, near your mouth to both set up noise canceling on the microphone as well as noise canceling on your earpieces for what we call automatic noise cancellation or ANC. And so, let's see. And so by using these in creative ways, we can help to zone in on just what you want to hear in the call. Um, the demos over here, I'm not going to click into each of these as Elizabeth is going to go over them all in great detail after I'm done. So when you get this deck, you can click on these, go into our YouTube channel on YouTube and listen to all the different features. Noise Block AI is our newest noise blocking feature. It takes a step above the acoustic fence in that it will the software listens for human speech and actually determines what is human and what is not, what is noise. So if you've got in a room, you've got HVAC. So your acoustic fence normally wouldn't cut that out because it's a physical area that it decides what to keep in and out. Whereas noise block, even within your area, it will attenuate all nonverbal sounds. So if you've got HVAC in the room, maybe you've got some street noises, sirens going on, things like that. It'll attenuate all those noises by a varying amount of decibels, depending on what the software is doing at the time, and keep out all the unwanted noise. Takes a little bit of processing power, so it's available on video bars and codecs, conference halls, the things that have a little bit more processor on them. And then the next version, we came out with this one just a few months ago. It's a new level of noise block. It's a new feature, I guess you could call it, noise block with sound reflection reduction. And we're about to rename this actually Noise Block version 2 because it does a lot of things in addition to the sound reflection reduction. Again, it's a fairly new and powerful tool. It's available as we speak in all of our Studio X bars, our Studio V bars, and our codecs. And what I'm going to do, the best way to illustrate how good this is, I'm going to play a little demo right now. And Elizabeth's going to show this again later, but I really wanted to show this in one of our demo rooms that we've got down in Austin. So we should hear this.
Reverberation can be a major issue in video calls, especially
You
in
can
larger
hear it
spaces that
sounds
have a
very
lot of glass
reverby. It's a
walls,
glassy
like you
room,
see here.
a lot of
And you might notice this even
reflections.
more as people start to turn away from the microphones to talk to someone who's sitting more in the back of the room.
Typically, to remove these audio artifacts, it would require acoustic paneling or complex hardware microphone arrays. And these can be very costly and time-consuming to install.
And now, with voice clarity enhancement from Poly, reverbs can be removed from calls via software upgrade. So let's turn the picture on. Voice clarity enhancement is now on, and you should be able to immediately hear the difference.
And this is true even for those who are sitting further away from the microphones. You should still sound close and clear, even if you're turning away to talk to someone who's sitting in the back of the room.
So hopefully you guys heard that well. So a lot of people just say, "Oh yeah, it sounds that way. It's just the conference room, right?" And people just live with it. Or sometimes you have to end up buying a lot of expensive acoustic treatments. There's products you can put on glass walls, and there's maybe curtains, things to absorb those sort of audio reflections in a room. And now with this new AI software, it just eliminates the need to all that expense of using other acoustic treatments in the room. So great new feature. It's very useful. Now I'm going to talk about video. So our video software is called Director AI. And it's got a lot of different features in it. A lot of these you may know already. So a lot of our cameras are digital nowadays, and so you start off with a wide sort of room view, and then you go through different framing modes. So these are available in our Studio X products and our USB connected studio bars and cameras that you can connect into BYOD rooms where you bring in your laptop, you plug in a camera. They're available for that. And one of the reasons you can do that is that the software, this Director AI, is actually built into the camera firmware. It's not offloaded to your PC. So in a BYOD environment, you can walk into a room with your laptop, you plunk it down, you plug in your USB, and bang, you get all these advanced features coming through, even though your laptop's not equipped with it. It's in the camera, audio and video. So you get this great experience, even though it's just a regular laptop, right? So the framing modes I'm about to show you, they vary a bit by product. We've got tables and charts of which products it's on. You just speak to Marco or ourselves about which products best suit your room. So let me go through them a little bit at a time here. So group framing is pretty obvious. You got a room view like on the upper right there. The people look kind of small. You turn on group framing. This is done usually in the admin interface. It's like a set and forget type thing. And the camera will look for humans in the room. It's got a head detector, torso detectors, face detectors, all this stuff's built into the Director AI software. So it'll zoom in on the humans in the room, and everybody looks a little bit bigger, like you see over here. And if somebody joins the group of people, it'll zoom out a bit. If somebody leaves the group, it'll zoom in a bit. It'll just kind of always keep people framed so that it looks good for the people on the far end of the call. People framing, more of the same, but a little bit more cropping out of white space. So if you when you turn on group framing, it'll take each of these people and crop them out, taking out a lot of ceiling and desk and floor, and glue them together. So now when you do that, I can see the people better. So if I'm looking at this fella here, is he understanding what I'm saying, right? I can't really see him. Group framing, I can see him a lot better, but now in people framing, I can see him a lot better again. And so it just helps me to read body language and facial expressions a little bit better. We do this in a 3x2 grid. Um, and we tried a 3x3 grid, but really the faces weren't any bigger than in regular group framing, so it was kind of moot to go to a 3x3 grid. So we do it in a 3x2, and if a seventh person joins the group, then the software automatically goes back to group framing again. It just goes into that other mode. And if, say, the seventh person leaves the room, then it'll jump back into people framing again. So pretty handy feature. A lot of people really like this, especially for the smaller conference rooms. Speaker framing adds in audio triangulation into its algorithm so that every one of our studio bars has a row of microphones on it, and those microphones can triangulate, kind of like when you close your eyes, your ears can triangulate on where somebody's talking. The cameras can then triangulate on where, out of that group of people, which one's actually speaking. And as different people in the room speak, it'll move from one person to the other. We've built in about a 3 or 4 second delay between them so that it doesn't jump back and forth too fast if somebody just goes, oh yeah, you don't want it jumping to them and then back again. So we've built in this 3 or 4 second delay, which is in the real world a pretty useful feature. Now, we've also got presenter tracking, which is kind of I'll just run this while I'm speaking here. This is more for educators and presenters. So when somebody stands up at the front of the room, and you've got to set it up in advance, obviously, but the presenter tracking will turn on. And as that person sort of moves around and, is drawing on a whiteboard and pacing, it'll actually like live track them. So that's available in several of our products that are, not all of them, but the ones that are kind of more tuned for educational type environments. Okay. And again, if there's either in speaker framing or presenter tracking, if something doesn't jive with that particular framing mode, it'll drop back to group framing by default. So in the case of speaker framing, if nobody in the room is speaking, because I'm speaking on the far end of the call, then it'll just jump back to group framing and you can see everybody because I'm talking. If everybody stops talking on top of each other, then the camera just goes, whoa, okay, wait, it goes back to group framing until somebody takes control of the conversation. Presenter tracking, same idea. It's meant to be one or two people at the front. If a whole bunch of people show up, then it'll just go back to group framing again. The latest thing that we've done is poly perimeter. And I know Elizabeth has an excellent demo on this coming up, so I won't run the demo. But basically, what used to happen and happens in a lot of our competitor products is you've got glass on the side of the room, like up over here. The camera will go, hey, look, more humans, and it'll try to include them in the call. And with poly perimeter, what we do in the setup interface of the devices is you can plunk in the actual dimensions of the room. And then the camera does the math and, the sort of, it sees a keystone shape instead of rectangular, right? Because it's at the end. It'll see the shape of the room. It'll detect how big the people are. And it will then ignore all the people outside of that space. And then you won't get, sort of the camera framing in on people outside of glass. It also works in open spaces and shared areas. So if you got a big open area with a Studio X at one end, and you just want to frame the people sitting on the chairs around there, you can set up the perimeter just however big you need it to be, and it'll frame just on those people. You may have some pictures or displays with people on them at the far wall. If you pull in your perimeter by a foot or two off the back wall, then it'll stop framing on those pictures and displays and stuff like that. So very, very handy feature, very effective. A lot of people really love this feature. It just came out a few months ago and we're getting a lot of great feedback on it. So I just have a couple of minutes here left. What I'm going to do is talk about the next big thing for Director AI. And this is, I guess you could call it a bit of a sneak peek, but it has been announced at a couple of the trade shows that came out recently. It's called the E360 camera. So when you're dealing with cameras that are at the end of a room, you're getting a lot of this, right? You see people who are, if they're looking at my presentation, they're obviously looking at the screen so I can see their faces. But as soon as they start cross-talking across the table, then I'm getting the ear cam and I don't really see their faces anymore. And I'm kind of maybe excluded from the conversation. So what are we doing about this? We are adding a camera called the E360. It's coming out in several months from now, sort of Q4-ish. And it's going to work in conjunction with the end of room system. So in this case, it could be an X52 or a V52 at the front of the room here. And the two will work together. There's 4 cameras are on the top of this, so a 360 view with 4 cameras getting a great view. It's got microphones around it. They'll work together to determine get a face-forward view of people. So I'm going to run this demo in a second here. As I run it, notice that Gabriella and Andy and Marty here, when they start turning their faces back and forth, you'll notice that the AI software recognizes the same person from both cameras. So it'll see Marty from the end camera and from the center camera. The AI software says, hey, that's the same guy. So it's going to keep a frame for Marty. It's not going to get one frame for Marty's side of head and one frame for Marty's back of head or face on, right? It's always going to keep picking the best view of Marty and have one frame for Marty. So just have a quick listen to this.
Meeting equity is crucial for successful hybrid meetings, but today's virtual meeting experience remains far from perfect. All too often, remote participants take a backseat in hybrid meetings due to technical limitations.
This is especially true in large conference rooms such as this, where that single front of the room camera perspective quickly becomes broken when a participant turns their head away from the camera to speak to someone else.
Remote participants can no longer see or hear interactions clearly, and they're left feeling disconnected and disengaged.
When a meeting starts, the poly front of room camera captures everyone in the room, centered on screen. But as soon as the discussion starts to happen, the Poly Studio E360 works in tandem with a Poly front of room camera to deliver the best angle of participants at the table. Adaptive technology works behind the scenes to capture the best view, whether you're looking to the center of the room or to the front of the room.
Smart switching chooses between the camera at the center of the table and the camera at the front of the room to automatically deliver the best face-forward view of participants.
So what this means is it no longer matters where you sit or where you're looking. The Poly Studio E360 will always capture the best view, giving those verbal and nonverbal cues out to the remote participants.
The Poly Studio E360 delivers meeting equity to hybrid teams, where everyone has equal share of presence and voice, no matter where they're seated or where they're jogging from.
Okay, so hopefully the audio on that came through, and you guys kind of saw what this new camera is doing. Like I say, it's we're working on it right now. It's in going to be in beta trials shortly here, and then it should be out by the end of the year, sort of sometime in Q4. So exciting new stuff. And that's what I had for you today. So now to give you demos of all that stuff, I'm going to pass you over to Elizabeth.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John, for that quick presentation about Poly's technologies. And I'm excited to demonstrate all of those technologies for you today. Now, before I begin, I just want to level set and note that all of the technologies and innovations that John presented are all in support of what Poly calls meeting equity or meeting equality, which is the idea that we want to make sure that your participants in meetings are able to fully engage in that presentation, that conference, that meeting, collaboration that's happening, whether they are joined in from a remote location, maybe their home office, maybe they're on the road, or joining in from a conference room. So to level set here, I am using the Poly X70 video bar. This is a Studio X bar, an all-in-one with our Android-based codec, as well as your camera, mic, and speakers built into a one plug-and-play device as the endpoint for this demonstration. So this is a large room video bar. It has 25 feet of camera tracking as well as microphone pickup. And just to show exactly how far that microphone pickup reaches, the first demonstration that I want to show is actually just zooming out really quick. So you can see my entire space. This is my space, so it's about 24 feet deep. And if I walk all the way back to this back corner here, about 23, 24 feet away, hopefully you can still see me all the way back here, speaking at my normal speaking voice, you should be able to hear me nice and clear. So that microphone pickup is really powerful. It's designed to make sure that even though we're only using the microphones in the bar that's set at the front of the space, above or below our monitors, everybody in that room, even the furthest person back at the head of the table, can speak normally and be heard. Now, with microphones that are that powerful, we also know that they can pick up noises that we don't want them to transmit to the far end. So especially in modern conference rooms, you can see that I have glass walls here, large windows. Those invite a lot of noises to come through from the hallways or from outside that we don't want to distract our far end participants. So we built in that acoustic fence feature, which John mentioned in his presentation, which uses the beamforming microphone in the X70 bar to allow me to actually delineate how much of that microphone pickup I want to keep in the meeting and what I want to mute out. So I'm going to set my acoustic fence here. And as John mentioned, this is a back-end setting. So I'm just using the admin panel here to set that. And now that my acoustic fence is set, I'm going to walk and talk outside of it. And you should be able to hear as soon as I cross over that invisible line. I'm just going to walk and talk outside of my hear me within range once again. So you should have heard as soon as I crossed over, my voice was just muted down because I was outside of the fence that I set for this space. And then as I crossed back in, being able to be heard, transmitted to the far end once again. So with that acoustic fence, I set it quite narrow to make sure that I can cross over the fence within the confines of my space. But of course, when these rooms are installed, you would be able to work with your IT admin and people on site to ensure that the fence is customized to the preferred width for that particular space to make sure that everybody can be heard inside the room and nobody outside the room can be heard. I'm just going to turn off my acoustic fence here so that I don't step outside it during the rest of my demo. And I'm just going to zoom in for this next demonstration. So in his presentation, John did mention that there were two other audio innovations, noise block AI and sound reflection reduction, that also contribute to the elimination of distractions for far end participants. So while the acoustic fence is eliminating those distracting noises outside of the room, we also know that there's a lot of noises that come through in the conference rooms that can be distracting. So whether that's your loud HVAC noises, loud keyboard typing, rustling of papers on the table, or maybe someone wants to have a quick snack, you might be able to hear that snack wrapper rustling. All of those can bleed through to the far end and make it really distracting for them. So in order to tamp all of those noises down and suppress them as much as possible, we have our noise block and our sound reflection reduction. So just to demonstrate what that actually sounds like in practice, I want to note that during this demonstration, I've had both of those acoustic treatments on. So you've heard that audio come through with the noise block and the sound reflection reduction. I'm going to turn those features off so that you can hear how it sounds without those innovations enabled. And as soon as I did that, you should be able to hear a very marked difference in the sound of my voice and any other extraneous noises in the room. So as you noticed before, I have glass walls, so you may hear that my voice sounds a little bit more hollow because it's bouncing off of all the hard surfaces in this room. I do get quite a bit of echo in this space. And then in addition, if I were to do anything else that causes noise, let's say I decide that in the middle of this webinar, I want to treat myself to a snack, as I rustle this bag of cookies, you can hear all of that noise as well. So again, with that noise block and sound reflection reduction, we want to treat these extraneous noises. So I'm just going to turn on the sound reflection reduction and the noise block one more time. And now with those acoustic treatments back on, again, you should hear that audible difference in how much more natural and close to the microphone my voice sounds compared to before, eliminating as much as possible all of those echoes and reverberations of my voice across the hard surfaces of this room. And then finally, if I were to rustle that cookie bag again, with that noise block AI on, you should be able to hear how much more muted down that sound is. Even if I start to speak and I'm ruffling that bag, you'll hear again it is much more suppressed compared to without those innovations turned on. So that's just a quick demonstration of how our acoustic fence, our noise block AI, and the sound reflection reduction work together in synergy to make sure that your far end is protected from all those auditory distractions that can happen inside and outside a conference room space. Now with those audio innovations out of the way, I want to showcase our camera's AI camera tracking, or director AI technology as Polly calls it, that also contribute to that sense of meeting equity or meeting equality within a space. So I'm going to go through a few different camera tracking modes for you today. The first is going to be called speaker framing. And I'm just going to flip to speaker framing right here in my settings panel. And as soon as I do that, you can see how that camera has just framed me portrait style with that head and shoulders view. So you on the far end can really engage one-to-one with me. As the presenter, you can now see that you can track my expressions, my gestures. You're able to really have that conversation one-to-one. Our production rules allow me to move around within this frame without the camera adjusting its frame too much. That also helps eliminate visual distractions for the far end. But as soon as I move out of the frame, we'll see that the camera is going to just reframe me wherever I am in the room. So it's as if this invisible cameraman is simply tracking where I am throughout the presentation or the conversation. Similarly, if I have a second person join the conversation, the camera will track to them. So my colleague Jasmine is joining me in the demo studio, and I'll have her introduce herself so that you can see how the camera behaves when multiple people are in the room together. So Jasmine, I'll flip it to you.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Hi, everybody. I'm Jasmine Cottingham. I am our Herndon office manager, as well as one of the executive assistants who supports our public sector sales team.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jasmine. So you can see that as Jasmine began speaking, the camera lingered on me for just a moment, just as you saw the camera stay on Jasmine for a second as I began to speak again. The reason that the camera has that slight delay before it moves to the next person is just to ensure that it's not a quick interjection. Someone isn't just saying yes or no, or sneezing, maybe coughing. We want to make sure that the camera is always tracking on whoever the primary speaker is. So the camera waits just a second, determines that someone has meaningfully joined the conversation, and then it just flips right to them. So again, as if that invisible cameraman is moving from one person to the other as they join into that conversation, and always making sure that the active speaker is the one being framed at any given time. Now, in addition to the speaker tracking mode, we also have a few other modes. So as John mentioned, we have group framing. And again, I'm just going to flip over to group framing right now so that you can see what that looks like in practice. So moving over to group framing, you can see that the camera is just nicely framing us as a group. The camera still sees the full 120-degree field of view on the back end, but it's cutting us out so that there's not too much extra space around us for you on the far end to see. So it still allows you to kind of have that one-to-one conversation with each of the participants in the room. You can still see our gestures, our expressions, and really feel like you're in the room with us. And then finally, the tracking mode that I'm most excited about is people framing, and it splits the difference between speaker and group framing really nicely. So here I'm just, again, flipping over to people framing. You may see the camera adjust for one moment. And after that camera adjusts, you can see that it has broken Jasmine and I out into two separate frames within one single Teams tile. So what these two separate frames are doing is still actively tracking us, and it's applying that rule of thirds to still give us that head and shoulders portrait style aesthetic that we've all gotten used to, especially taking calls from our webcams, integrated webcams in our laptops, especially over the past few years where we're all, we all have that really nice view, especially in our home office, of how we want to be seen on our conference calls. So now it's replicated for us here in our office spaces, and particularly our conference spaces. Now we are still individually tracked. So if I go ahead and sit down here, you'll see that the camera is going to remain stable on Jasmine while it reframed on me. And you can see that even though I'm sitting and Jasmine is standing, the camera is evening out our heads and shoulders. So for you on the far end, it still appears that we're kind of all around that same virtual table. Everybody is seen and framed equally within this space. And again, for the far end participant, now you can still engage with me. You can listen to my presentation. You can watch my expressions, my gestures. But what you also now get to see is the rest of the room and how they may react to what they're thinking. So all those nonverbal cues that you miss by not being in a physical space together with other participants in a meeting, you get to see here. And for instance, if Jasmine is nodding along in agreement with what I'm saying, you get to see that. Maybe I'm completely off base and she's shaking her head in disagreement. You can see that too. So it really helps you feel like you are all together at one, and all of those nonverbal cues that you would typically miss by not being in that space together, the far end now has access to in a really meaningful way. And that really is the paramount of meeting equity or meeting equality. Now for the final demonstration, I do want to show the innovation that John showed towards the end of his presentation, which is called Director AI Perimeter. And for this demonstration, I'm just going to stand back up. So you may see that camera again just adjust as it reframes on me. Now with that Director AI Perimeter, we're solving the issue of modern spaces having glass walls or maybe no walls at all. So if Jasmine leaves the room to take a side conversation and she comes to a stop outside of our glass wall, the camera can likely still see her, and it will probably track her into this call, even though now she's outside her conference space. So while it's sometimes a little bit entertaining or funny for this to happen, it can get really frustrating and not very funny very quickly. So in order to make sure that this does not happen in your calls, we've developed the Director AI Perimeter. So here what I'm able to do, if I go back to this admin panel that I have, is set the parameters of my space, a width, a depth, and an exclusion zone at the front of my space, and tell the camera, outside of these exact parameters, I don't want you to track anybody into the image. So as soon as I set that parameter, Jasmine was removed from the image because the camera understands that she's no longer in the room. Now, when Jasmine's ready to rejoin us in this conference and she comes back into the room, the camera will also automatically understand that she is back within the perimeter that I've set, and she'll be re-added to the image. So Jasmine's just coming back in now, and we'll see that in just a moment. She will rejoin within this frame. I'll give a second as the camera just adjusts and brings her back in. But here we can see that with the Director AI Perimeter function, it really helps to eliminate some of those issues that we've all gotten used to and sometimes come to simply accept or be resigned to when it comes to those modern spaces. And so here we're really able to go above and beyond to create that distraction-free environment that's still as engaging as possible for those who are coming in to these calls remotely or from a far-end location. So that concludes my demonstration of our innovations that contribute to that sense of meeting equity and meeting equality. So I'm going to hand it over to Dan for final remarks, but thank you all so much.
Elizabeth, one of the questions that just came in here in the Q&A was about the ease of use of the control panels in the system. So do you have a method of zooming in on one of the control panels right now just to show what it's like?
I can actually, if I step aside here, let me actually turn tracking off first, and I'll zoom in really quick so you can see what this looks like. So hopefully you can see here, I have a couple of control panels here. This is our control panel within a Microsoft Teams room, the TC8. The panels also come in a larger format, the TC10, which is right here. Again, these are shown with my Teams setup right now, but they can also be utilized with any of the other platforms that Poly partners with, like Zoom or Google. In terms of the control panel and how easy it is to change, for instance, the camera tracking function, both Teams and Zoom now allow the end user to change that tracking function right on the control panel, and it's very easy when you're in a call. Very, very user friendly. Both of the control panels mimic the design and the kind of user experience of the platform. If you are used to, let's say, Zoom or Teams on your laptop or your mobile device, all of the iconography, all of the fonts, the design of it on the touch panel is exactly the same. So it's very easily adoptable by tech users and knowledge workers today.
And I'd say one of the things that makes them really useful is normally when you set up a conference room, you're going to name it, you're going to give it an email address, you'll give it an account like you would a user, except it's a room account instead of a user account. And so conferencerooma@customer.com. And when you're setting up your meetings in advance, normally what you do is you invite, Sally and Jim and Bob and conference room A to the call. You invite all these things to the call. And when the meeting room system gets the meeting invitation, it'll just plunk it onto the calendar on the screen there and onto the touch panel down below. And there'll be a join button right there. And all you have to, when you walk into the room, it's as simple as walking up and tapping on the join button, and the system will join the meeting. And then once you're in the meeting, of course, then you'll have your call controls, volume, mute, camera selection, that type of stuff. So hopefully that answered the question. Oh, hang on, another post. Okay, when companies are starting to look at new conference solutions, what are some common things they should think through? Well, size of room is obviously the important one. We have maybe what I'll do is I'll quickly reestablish my share here. In our portfolio of products, we've got, just click here. These are my backup slides that you'll get when I send these out. These are mainly the products, and they're based on room size. So for a little room, X30, Studio X30, right up to a large room, Studio X70, or maybe the G7500, a little bit more flexible. These are appliances, meaning they're all in one. So not a lot of wiring. You hang them on the wall, you plug in Ethernet, HDMI, log them into an account, and you're off to the races. We have our BYOD type cameras. These can be used to be plugged into a PC to bring in your laptop or maybe a room system. These can be combined into what we call room kits for Teams and Zoom. So you pick your type of PC that you want, either Teams or Zoom, and then you pick your camera that you want. So again, room size, oftentimes what the acoustics are like in the room, and use case of the room as well is often going to come into it. If you have a room that needs cameras pointed at a podium as well as at the audience, maybe it's a large room, you need to connect to DSP. So there's a lot of things to go in, and that's what the guys at Marco and ourselves obviously are good at, is looking at your rooms, figuring out what's needed in there, and putting together the right solution for the room in question.
There's also a tool out online, John, that we could talk about, which is Polyspaces, which is where you can kind of get a feel for the layout and how the cabling's going to look and how you're going to position all of the gear in the room.
Absolutely.
Okay. Doesn't look like there's any more questions, so I'll pass it over to Dan.
Any other questions? Well, now would be the time. Otherwise, yeah, we can get this meeting wrapped up here, and we'll keep an eye on the chat here for any final ones. But grateful for John and Elizabeth for their presentations and showing us, our customers, the benefits of these units. Marco's happy to be a power partner with Poly and have access to the latest video conferencing devices. Poly is working very hard, and they have a very impressive lineup with 14 new products coming soon within over the next years. See what else they come out with to help us to be more immersive into the experiences here. So with Marco and Paulie, you can ace your meetings. also thank you, Kim, for putting this together and hosting the meeting. And I thank you guys on the call, guys and gals in the call here, for taking the time today to sit and learn about Polly and Marco and how we can help your meetings be more successful. So if you need more information or wanna dive deeper into it, please contact your Marco rep, or you can email marco@marconet.com, and that'll get you in touch with somebody that can help you out with these products.